Here on this week's Weigh In podcast, I'd like to bring to you on this segment, we're going to talk about that 285 heavyweight shakeup in the NCAAs and the return of Gable Steveson. And what does that do for that heavyweight stacked weight class? So if we look at heavyweight right now, and we can go ahead, I'll go ahead and pull up the open mat rankings for heavyweight. We're going to go off of the openmat.com for their rankings of heavyweight. So when you look at heavyweight rankings as of right now, you've got Gable Steveson, the number one ranked. You've got Greg Kerfleet at number two, and you've got Wyatt Henderson at number three. That Oklahoma State, the Okie State that we've talked about. So this path to Okie State. So when you look at Wyatt Henderson's path, when we really get into this shake of the heavyweight, Wyatt Henderson's path to a title now, it has gotten a little difficult with adding of Gable Steveson because Gable Steveson is very well a front runner of heavyweight, very well a chance to win the national title as well as anybody. I think when you look at that 1, 2, 3, I think it's going to be interesting when it comes to NCAA's because you won't know how it's going to shake out. You won't really know how it's going to shake out depending on where it shakes out. Because, I could see Greg Kerfleet winning. I could see Steve winning. I could see Wyatt Henderson winning. And, really, I want to see, I want to see Cowboy Wrestling and David Taylor get off to a good start. So I really want to see Wyatt Henderson take that title at 285. But if we're going to go through what has been said, the NCAA tournament is still not close. We're still, some ways out from that. But it all is going to depend on the way the seeding goes here. When you look at the NCAA tournament and the way they seed this heavyweight may be the difference for Wyatt Henderson and those three because it could go either way. You could see it where Gable Steveson and Greg Kerfleet have to see each other in the semi, or Wyatt Henderson and Gable Steveson have to see each other in the semi, or Craig Kerfleet and Wyatt Henderson have to see each other in the semi. So depending on how that may, how that seeding may come out, we're going to speculate and say that, if I'm Wyatt Henderson, I like my chances, that there are some good heavyweights out there. And don't put it past. We've got Colton Schultz, Nick Feldman. We've got some good, solid heavyweights. But the reason I bring these three up, Gable Stevenson's at 5-0 right now. Greg Kerfleet's at 11-0. Wyatt Henderson's at that 13-0. And I bring this up because those are the three undefeated heavyweights, and that's it's going to be fireworks when they come into. And what's to be said, Minnesota and Penn State are in the Big Ten, and Oklahoma State, is not. They're in the Big 12. So you look at Wyatt Henderson can end this year. He can end the year undefeated. I'm not saying Gable Steveson can. I'm not saying, Greg Kerfleet can. But I'm saying, when you start to get into that, we talk most about Big Ten wrestling. Anybody can be beat. You look at Greg Kerfleet, it could happen. It could happen, but it most likely will not. But when you look at the way this can fall out, you look at the path to victory here for Wyatt Henderson to win that 285 title. When the way that seeding comes out is going to make a big difference to his path to be able to make and win the heavyweight national title this year, the 285-pound national title. And that's going to be the big difference here is when NCAA's happens, that seeding and the way it comes may be the difference for Wyatt Henderson of Oklahoma State. But to put that in retrospect, really to put it in retrospect for wrestling fans, what it means is that the difference is when you get down to NCAA's is the race is all about team tournament, the team tournament, the team tournament, the team tournament. And it's about that team tournament title because it is NCAA's is an individual. As you all know, wrestling fans, NCAA's is an individual, but it's that team title, that NCAA trophy they all reach for. And earlier in an earlier episode on the podcast, we talked about how the Oklahoma State Cowboys looked like a good front runner to do so. And when you look at it, you say if they do their best wrestling, they could possibly make a lot of noise at the NCAA tournament and possibly be front runners in that team title. I see them coming away with hardware either way, but it would be a great distinction for David Taylor and the Oklahoma State Cowboys to get off to an immaculate start to his coaching career to have gotten an NCAA title, you know. But it was like it's just a lot going on in wrestling. You look at you look at Penn State. They got a really good team this year. They have a good team, and you look at that team and you say it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to beat that team. But with that being said, that's not always the common denominator is to just solely say I have to beat this team. The denominator is to do the best wrestling for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and that's their best wrestling. And that's their goal, is to do their best wrestling down there. But if we're going to keep it close over to, more of the segment, Gable Steveson back in NCAA wrestling, where does Steveson lay out? You guys can weigh in the comment section how you feel. I think Gable Steveson definitely shakes up that 285 bracket because Gable Steveson is a great wrestler. The way Gable Steveson flourishes is just absolutely beautiful. The way you see Gable Steveson wrestle, you don't see a lot of that wrestling from in those upper weights like the way you do it with Gable Steveson. It's just he's been like that since he's gotten in. He's done great wrestling, and there's always that great heavyweight, but we always talked about how that great heavyweight gets knocked off because remember Kyle Snyder knocked off Gliss. You talk about, is this Craig Gerfleet or Wyatt Henderson's time to knock off Gable Steveson? Is it the time to knock off Steveson? Is it the time to say, hey, your time has come and gone and I beat Gable Steveson? And that's something we can sit here and say is it possible that Gable Stevenson's Cinderella run back to an NCAA title is stopped by either a Wyatt Henderson or Greg Kerfleet? Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. And we're going to break it down here right now for you. Now, in any situation, you always want to start the match best way. Now, if Craig Kerfleet goes up against Gable, the system here would be to score early, to get an early 2 points. Because if you can get out front, that's going to make the difference here because Gable's a guy that likes to move, and Lady's going to be able to score. So if you can get out front, either wrestler, Wyatt Henderson or Craig Kerfleet, if you get out front, you want to get out front and score your points early. You want to score those points early. And I say that because when you score those points early, you want to get them out so that you could be ahead of the game, ahead of the match, rather than be behind. And I think when you go in against a guy like Gable Steveson, multiple-time national champ, absolutely a good, if you look at the Mount Rushmore of heavyweights, of 285-pounders, definitely up there. You look at definitely on that route much more. This is a guy that you want to be able to say, hey, this is something I got to get through. And NCAAs, when you look at it, it's gonna be wild this year. A lot of good wrestling from a lot of different weights. You look at, can Matt Ramos finally find himself a national title? You see a lot of good wrestling is going to come out of this year's NCAAs. And I think the more storybook is going to be that 285. You've got a chance here that could be the difference maker if it really comes down to it for either team, because you have Craig Griffey, you have Wyatt Henderson that they're going to All-American. Those three guys and Gable Steveson. Those are three All-Americans. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of what place they take can be the difference. Because if you can get a guy into the finals, it's better to get your guy into the finals. But it's a matter of what place they take, because this is the year where you have a lot of good coaching changes and everybody's chasing that Kiel Sanderson. And it's not going to be easy. So you're going to need every point you can take. And with Gable Steveson coming in, that kind of shakes things up just a little bit, because Craig Kerfleet is going to be an All-American. He's going to be an All-American, probably I would say within 5 placements from 1 to 5. I don't see him falling anything under 5. And I say the same about Wyatt Henderson. I say the same about Gable Steveson. So I see those guys are either going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Somewhere in there, they're going to be in between there. And I say that because those are guys that are really good. When you look at them wrestle, you could tell that they have the potential to be All-Americans. All three of them, I think, have the potential to be national champs. But, only 2 can make the final. So one of them is going to be an All-American. And it could possibly be Wyatt Henderson. It could possibly be Greg Kerfleet. But it's going to be interesting when NCAAs comes around is that seeding, the way that seeds, because that's going to be the difference maker for how it goes. You could see it, and they all could see each other before the final, way before the semifinal, or even the final. It's going to be a difference maker how they see that 285 at the NCAA tournament. And I think it's no shy to say our past episodes have gone a little more about one of our past episodes about women's and all of that. And I think if we dab a little there just quickly, that is one thing that it is full in sync, D2, D3. That's going to be interesting when they get that tournament next year. It's going to up our wrestling madness for the weigh-in at least. We're going to be able to do a little more bracket drafting. And I think this year we're going to be doing the Division I bracket drafting. And then I believe I'm, going to get in with some of my friends that we've done in previous years. I'm going to get in with them so we can possibly do whatever women's national they do. We're probably going to bracket draft for that as well. And I think that just brings more fun for the fan. You know, Generally what we normally do is we do it similar to the NFL draft. We get a randomizer online and we put our names in and we randomize it and that goes the order. And then we just have an order where basically it's like the NFL draft. Basically we're we're drafting different wrestlers, and then we have we allow we have two phone a friend. So in 2 rounds, we allow somebody to phone a friend who might know better wrestling knowledge for some of my friends because they're not big on wrestling. So some of that wrestling knowledge, they can phone a friend that they might know that has better wrestling knowledge. But with that being said, we're gonna kind of get back to that. Please let us know in the comments if you'd like us to, almost live stream that for all of you guys this year. Do something more of a live stream, kind of our draft and who we pick what and how it goes on and who's what. And definitely put that in the comment section if you want it, because we can definitely figure it out, definitely get it going. I mean, we've done it most years, so we're going to do it again this year. So we definitely can get that back up and again this year, and it'd be no problem to live stream it with all the guys and see the different draftings going on and like that. We'll definitely do a nice thing. But if you guys want it, we can do it to the fans of the way, and we can get that done. But with that being said, we're gonna roll on back to Gable Steveson. Gable Steveson back in the NCAA, very clear, very cool. You kind of look at when you talk about Gable Steveson, you look at what happened. He left to the WWE. WWE didn't really use him as a talent. I mean, they used him, but I kind of would have liked. I'm not big WWE fan, but this is more on the wrestling side. I would have liked them to have, I guess, implemented Gable. I would have liked them to have implemented Gable a little more. And with that being said, I would have liked Gable to have been implemented a lot more across the board. Gable is a great guy. Gable Steveson, that has done a lot of good things, that has done so many things that are different. He has been there for multiple times as a national champion. He's got a following, and even then after that, he was released from WWE. Gable Steveson turned around and was tried out for the Buffalo Bills. Tried to almost think, hey, let's try and do football here. And I think he's coming back to wrestling. I think I would have rather liked to see him continue to try to make that world team, get a couple world teams. If you're Gable, why not, try that UFC route like Bo Nickel. I think there are plenty of options for Gable Steveson for this coming back to NCAA wrestling, but I think he definitely put a corkscrew in the plan of, hey, it was going to be a Craig Gerfley, Wyatt Henderson. To me, I believe it was going to be a Craig Gerfley, Wyatt Henderson NCAA final, and with Gable Steveson coming and now wanting to come back and wrestle, now you say, well, that changes everything because now you have Gable Steveson that can possibly come out and wrestle. And if Gable Steveson is now come out and wrestle, now everything was different. And that was, when the early reports were out, we said it's possible. It's possible that Gable Steveson come in and put a corkscrew in that plan. And now that Gable Steveson has wrestled and is wrestling the second semester, it has put the corkscrew in the plan now that it's going to be interesting to see how that final draw, even if you're, if we talk a little bit about Colton Schultz, even if you're Colton Schultz and you thought, I might have a good chance at, getting up there and possibly getting up to semi, Gable Steveson coming back poses for some of those lower ranked heavyweights that might have thought, this is my year to shine. Gable Steveson coming back has changed a lot of things, and that changes a lot because you look at how Gable Steveson is going to probably more than likely work his way through the bracket up to the semis. We can safely say Gable Steveson will be in the semis. I can safely believe that Craig Fleet will be in the semis. I can safely believe Wyatt Henderson is in the semis. So you say after that, what other heavyweight makes the semis? So when you look at that and you talk about the ranked heavyweights, what other heavyweight makes the semis? And when you talk about something like that, what other heavyweight, and you look at that kind of thing, you say, okay, you could say Nick Feldman. You could say maybe Nick Feldman makes it the semis. Maybe Nick Feldman gets in the semis. But there's a lot of good heavyweights here where you say, okay, what if Ben Cooter, I believe his last name is, sorry if I mispronounce it, of Iowa, if he makes that semi, you look at, okay, well, let's talk about Seth Nevels of Maryland. What if Seth Nevels comes out and makes a good wrestling? You look at, there's a lot of good guys here where you say, okay, you don't know who that last guy in the semis is going to be. And I can safely say as the way, and I know how it's going to go, depending on how those brackets draw. If Gable Steveson and Craig Fleet are lined up where they're only meeting the semis, that would be good. I think I see Gable Steveson, Craig Fleet in the semis. I see Wyatt Henderson, unless they're going to meet before the semis, and that's the way the seeding goes. Then I see the three of those in the semis. It's to talk about that last spot. It's to talk about if somebody like Nick Feldman is to fit himself in, or Colton Schultz to fit himself in, where do they play out? Well, I can tell you very well, I don't think, hats off to Nick Feldman and Colton Schultz. Great wrestlers, but I wouldn't see them buying into the NCAA finals, not with that top three that we've got going on that, but it depends. It also, we have to take into fact here, the way the seeding may lay out. So the way that seeding may lay out may possibly, it will play a difference, because if Gable Steveson and Craig Fleet meet before they even get to the semis, well, now that's different. You could possibly have a Colton Schultz plus a Nick Feldman in the semis, possibly, but it's always going to depend on how that seeding comes out. And I'm sure when the brackets are dropped, we're more than likely do a whole episode on that and break down from 125 all the way up to 285, because it's going to be the shakeout. We'll talk about how the path to victory for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, because that's what we're mainly focusing on this year on the podcast. We've kind of talked about the Oklahoma State Cowboys, and that's who we're going to continue to follow, is that Oklahoma State Cowboys, Okie State. And that's what we talk about, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. When we talk about that, that's the team that we're looking at this year to say, okay, that's the next best team we look at that has that chance of saying that's a good team that we can go ahead and stop Cale Sanderson. That's that Sanderson stop team. And that's a great way to look at that and say, wow, this is a really great way to go about things. This is really good for just either way. And when we do stuff like this, that's one thing we talk about, because Cale Sanderson very well has the way that lineup and that team looks, has lined himself up to win yet another NCAA tournament, to win and get another trophy, get another team title. But this really strong Oklahoma State supposes a threat to that if this David Taylor group, not if, they will wrestle very great. I believe it. If they go and do the wrestling that I believe they're going to do, they could possibly end out 1 or 2. And that's going to be all the difference maker, where it's going to have to be some hard fought wrestling from both teams. But even anybody can come and make a difference. It's always, there'll always be that team that surprises you, that gets up in the top 5 and you say, wow, they got there. But this year, I think that 1-2, I really think I see Oklahoma State either 1, 2, or 3. I see them within that range. Obviously everybody's going to see Penn State as the champion, but I see them same way. I think that this year it's going to shake out. How that seeding goes of those brackets is going to make a big difference for I think a lot of teams, but more than so, that 285-pound bracket is going to be really interesting to see how that seeding comes out, who's where, who's what. Now, I understand they still got to get through their conference, but I believe that those 3 guys, I believe that all those guys can get through the conference. I safely believe that that Wyatt Henderson's going to go ahead and more than likely, I'm going to say here with the win, I believe he's going to win the Big 12. Craig Fleet, Gable Steveson, they're going to meet probably more than likely. They will meet Big 10 finals. So you look at that, and those matches are going to detail how we can break down how that NCAA tournament's going to go between those two, because that's going to be the real interesting story to go here, is that Craig Fleet, Gable Steveson, Big 10 final. That's going to look really good, unless either or is to get injured. But as of right now, they're healthy. We would love to see them healthy, because that's a matchup I want to see. Craig Fleet, Gable Steveson. And I think that it's an interesting matchup because you have a Gable Steveson that has not, for say, been first foremost training wrestling. He might have still been wrestling, but hasn't been frontline competing, full action wrestling. He's been doing a lot of other stuff. And I think this is that time now where you say, okay, if Gable Steveson comes out and continues up this streak of good wrestling, Gable Steveson has thrown the corkscrew in the plan, and now it supposes Craig Fleet either making the NCAA final or Wyatt Henderson making the NCAA final. And you're David Taylor. You want to get as many of your guys, as we talked about before, in that quarterfinal. You really want to get them in the semis, because you get them in the semis, now they're All-American. Now you have All-Americans there. You have as many guys that make the NCAA tournament All-Americans, and that's what you want to do, because when you're chasing this Penn State, they may possibly, more than likely, have about 5 or 6 in the national championship. And if you have 5 or 6 in that national championship, now you've got to compete with that. And the keys to victory here is if they don't have that 5 or 6 in the national championship. That's possible. If they don't have 5 or 6 in the national championship, now we have something we can kind of depictate and work with here. Because if they don't have as many of their wrestlers in the national championship, the final, then now we've got this to the point where they're not all in a way where it's not going to be that, hey, the title is secure. The team title is secure. The team title, if Oklahoma State does their best wrestling, won't be secure. And if they do some of their really good wrestling and they continue their wrestling, it'll be in a way where it's not going to be a straight, hey, I've got the team title. Hey, it's there. Hey, I've got this. Hey, I've done this. It'll be in that sense where it's like, hey, we've got to still wrestle hard. With that being said, you want guys to stay healthy. You want it to be a competition. I would love to see it come down to the NCAA finals for both teams. I'd love to see Oklahoma State, Penn State. They need the guys to wrestle, nice intensity, because that brings a nice NCAA final. It brings things better than most. You look at, it doesn't become a secure Penn State team title like it does in the previous years. And I think with all wrestling, you're going to start to see, a lot of this, and NIL is going to make an impact on the wrestling. You're going to start to see these schools that are giving more NIL may make the difference of where certain guys are going to go. And it's already started to have some type of effect, but it has not taken a full effect. We've seen things differently. And even David Taylor moving over and coaching at Oklahoma State, coaching for the Oklahoma State Cowboys, has now done something very differently. It has now changed the culture of wrestling, because you now have a guy who is an Olympian, who was a great NCAA wrestler, who did things on the mat that most wish they could do. And when you look at that Penn State team that he was on, that was a good team. And you look at how his international success has happened, you say, wow, that is a really good wrestler that has learned a lot, and that has taken what he has learned and has used it in a sense that is very well helping him. He translates that to coaching. Who would have ever thought David Taylor to take over Oklahoma State University wrestling program? Nobody would have ever thought that. And I think that's something that, truly say that it was a true shakeup in the NCAA. Wow, David Taylor goes over there. He brings guys with him. He's got Thomas Gilman over there. You got RBY in that room, and that's something that really changes the depiction here to, yeah, now David Taylor has done that. Now the second part of this is bring him a team title. Bring him that team title. And you talk about bringing that team title, and really this is the best year when you got a good team to do it. And then it lines up even better where you have a Gable Steveson that comes back and now wrestles. And as long as Wyatt Henderson can make the NCAA final and Craig Graffleet can be knocked out, now you could possibly, in some situations, depending on where they fall, could possibly take that as an edge. It could possibly be a plus side for the Oklahoma State Cowboy wrestling team if the best wrestling, if Gable Steveson does his best wrestling and the way the brackets fall, that could be really different. You know, happy to see some matches of Gable. Gable, great wrestler. Happy to see Gable Steveson get back out there. It's great to see a guy like Gable Steveson come back and wrestle and really come back and still be able to be competing at the same way he was, where he left off. It's like no page unturned. It's like you closed one chapter and now you're rewriting another one. And it's like, hey, we're back. And now we're bringing that wrestling back and we're going back to Minnesota. We're going to the same school he was at before, and we're continuing to wrestle with that Gopher team and just continuing it. In the near future, going forward, I'd like to see Gable compete for, the world team. I'd like to see him still continue to wrestle some more years. I would like to see some more out of Gable because I do think he's still got a lot of wrestling left in him when it comes to the world team and international success. I think he's still got a lot of that left in him, and I think he should still try to make some of those teams because that could be the difference here for Gable. You can continue some of your best wrestling internationally. A lot of guys do it. David Taylor was one that has done it. Kyle Dake is one that has done it, and not to mention Jordan Burroughs did most of his international wrestling was that successful in international wrestling. He had his NCAA titles, he had his state titles, but really outshined is that international success where it was, it was hard to beat a Jordan Burroughs. And even now, just because he's not on any team now, that doesn't mean he isn't going to come back. He's still competing, still doing those good things. And you look at Gable and you would like to see Gable do more. You would like to see Gable still project himself a little further, even if that means, doing a couple years of a world team, or even if that means going and joining MMA. You'd like to still see Gable out there because that's a great wrestler. He's got great technique, great form out of Gable, and you just like to see Gable continue to wrestle his way through a lot of that wrestling. You like to still see Gable keep going and keep doing it because Gable, when you watch Gable is a very great person when you're the upper weights to learn off of some of the stuff Gable does. Gable, when you look at a lot of his wrestling, it's good to learn off when you're the upper weights. It's great to learn off of Gable. I think when it comes to learning, even at the lighter weights, you can still. I think it doesn't matter what weight class you are, you can still learn from certain weights. You can still learn some stuff that Gable does and be able to use it at lighter weights. The effectiveness is to be there. There's, whether it's going to be effective is a different story, but you can still learn from any and all forms of wrestling because, you base things down to at the same time, it comes down to it's still going to be the same shot. So if Gable's shooting a high crotch, yeah, Gable might have set up his high crotch, with a big man setup. And, maybe he might have done that. Maybe he might have set it up that way. Maybe he might have used a Kyle Snyder type setup where, you're kind of, you're using your hands a little more, you're using your collar ties very well in a manifest where it's being used fast and you're moving fast with your collar ties. Setup is very well the biggest thing you can learn because a lot of these Division I wrestlers, you see the way they set their shots up. It tells the difference the way they're setting up some of these shots when it comes to these Division I wrestlers because the way a lot of these shots are set up is a big difference to the way a lot of this wrestling is done because the way a lot of these shots are set up is sometimes you see a guy, they'll take their time, they'll set it up. Sometimes you'll see guys where they will set it up quick. It's like boom, bam, already done, already set up. He's already got his takedown, and those are the quick setups are the best setups for short-term scoring situations. And I say short-term and for a reason because short-term is if you need a quick 2 points. You're down 2 points and you're in the third period and you need 2 points and your guy's up one or he's got a riding time point, that's something that is going to make the difference. That quick score, quick 2 points would make the difference. Now, in most of wrestling, I say most because NCAA, they've made the change to a 3-point takedown. You look at some states have also made the turn to a 3-point takedown. Now, with that being said, that it'll be a quick 3 points. In your state, if you're still 2 points, it's a quick 2 points. Or in NCAA wrestling, it's quick 3 points. Or as in most states like New Jersey, it's 3 points. So when you talk about that, you say, okay, that 3 point, it's that quick takedown score. No matter how many points the takedown is, it's that quick takedown score. If you need 2 points or if you need 3 points, what you need, that quick score, that quick setup is always going to make the difference. So with that being said, that is this week's episode of The Weigh-In. I thank you for watching. If you've gotten to this point of the video, thank you. You're a true fan of The Weigh-In, and we truly thank you for your support. This is The Weigh-In. Thank you for this week's Takedown Thursdays. Weigh-In out.